Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I guess I want to transition it to Palantir. I mean, you have been actually no, before we get to Palantir, because I've heard from a little birdie, you sold a stock a little too early and you regret it to this day. And I think it'll be a great lesson. I think you save it as a great lesson. It's why you're so adamant on Twitter to not sell some of your winners and just let them ride. Can you tell us the name of the company you sold that has now gone on many, many, many times of a return if you had not sold it?
Yeah. So it is that stock is Nvidia. It is like in 2008. I had some remnant money remaining from my .com bust era, right? I mean, in one of the accounts, and I was like, okay, let me see this, and Nvidia was coming up with the graphics cards around that time. Okay, bought it. It was at pre-split. It was probably at like around $12 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if you consider the split, it is probably at like $2,
right?
$2, $3 or something. For I only had like around 200 shares or something, and 5 years I completely forgot about. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I go back and look at the account; it is like 5x the month. So yeah, I mean, didn't know better, just sold it. So that position alone would have been worth more than $1 million. If
Wow.
I had basically like, I mean, and a $2,500 investment would have been probably like, I mean, close to $1 million. I don't know the exact amount after all the recent runs and everything, right? So that is the kind of mistakes that could happen, right? I mean, especially if you trade in and trade out of some of these things, right? I mean, it's not that I don't trade. I do, right? I mean, I don't talk much publicly about it because many of the investors, many of the folks are not basically like mature to the point where they can responsibly do that, right? From an investment perspective. And anyway, I mean, one thing I forgot to mention: anything that we talk here is not financial advice, right? I mean, it is just our own experiences and journeys, right? So take it as that.
Agreed. So you sold Nvidia a little too early, which is kind of why you're pounding the table to probably not sell Palantir that early. So I guess here's the open-ended question for you, and then we'll get deeper into it. What excites you about Palantir as a software engineer, as an investor, and why do you think it has the potential to become a generational company?
So I'll say primarily from the software engineer perspective, right? If you think about like how development works in many of these companies, right? I mean, I am very clearly I can say about all the tier 2 companies, right? Okay, you build a product, you don't really know how well that is received by the customer, right? I mean, when you go in, right? I mean, that is how traditionally, and then you learn, right? As you go along, right? There are better analytics tools that came along probably in the past 5-10 years, right? I mean, that is how you adapt your business, right? Now, where things have landed over the past 10 years, like, in the industry is that, like, you have so many of these different applications that are built on different data sets. But at the end of the day, these all data sets need to be connected together, right? I mean, for you to make any business sense out of it, it need to be connected together, right? So what generally happens today is that, like, okay, I mean, an executive wants an answer, right? Okay, how does our inventory look in this particular, warehouse, or which is our fast moving, SKU, right? There need to be analytics that is intentionally built on top, either using Grafana or one of those tools. It need to be built up, right? So that is one aspect, right? The other aspect is that basically with all the cloud development and everything, how much time is spent on basically cloud specific aspects of your product, right? Like if I want to deploy my product on GCP or Azure, how much time I'm taking to write Azure specific code or AWS specific code, or basically GCP specific code, right? And that will get tremendously reduced with some of the product lines that Palantir is coming up with, right? So that's definitely one aspect. I mean, it will connect the information together and give it to you in a way that it is more consumable. There are signals around it, right? All of that, right? So that is the usefulness aspect of it, right? I mean, and basically, I mean, the way I am seeing it is that, like, okay, the flow today is that, like, okay, if business need to understand, oh, there is a problem, we need to basically figure out the full details of how we can improve that situation. There has to be development work that need to happen. There has to be engineering cycles that need to be spent for that, right?
Right.
So instead of having that, they can, instead of spending that engineering time on building either the analytics or building basically knowledge around how to optimize things for the business, they can use it to really build the product and then use some of these tools provided by Foundry or the competitors, right? I mean, to basically like get that insights around the business. So that is where it starts, right? That's how I got interested with the company, right? I mean, because some of the problems that they are solving are real world problems, right? I mean, having worked for 25 years in multiple industries, I can tell you that, right? Now, it is even, that is at the very superficial level, right? Now, you get to the point where some of the products like Apollo, it is basically like, even making your end-to-end deployments far more easier.
Can you explain a little bit of can you explain a little bit from a software engineer's perspective? I don't know if you have the full grasp of it, but like, what is Apollo for those that are trying
I haven't used it, right, myself. So I can only tell it based on the videos that I have seen myself. Right? And some of the explanations that others like Coursera have given, right? I mean, but the problems are real, right? I mean, that they are trying to solve. It is like, okay, I want to deploy something to a service to AWS or Azure or GCP. I will not need to write any of the, this specific code, right? That gets taken care of in an abstraction layer, basically, right? And the other aspect is that basically there is effort and these tool sets that are being used to deploy or find out the errors, rollback, all of that, they are not like, there is no single tool, right? At least where I have seen is basically you use Jenkins to build things, like, and then you use another tool to do the CI/CD pipelines, all of that, right? Instead of that, you get a holistic solution where you can deploy to any platform, basically, right? And that is basically like, again, improving the productivity, right?
And as a developer, you can see the use case for that in any technology company.
Any technology company, right? I mean, that is why, I mean, Cisco signed up for it, right? So, yeah. So that could even become a much more bigger TAM even compared to Foundry, right? But I mean, we talked about a couple of product angles there, right? I mean, and look at the other new one, AIP, right? Look at what I'm most impressed about Palantir is the fact that they are coming up with these product lines just so quick, man. Right? I mean, I mean, it was a monolith product line initially, right? But then from there, they are basically spinning off things or putting wrappers to give different viewpoints of that same product or different, aspects of that product standalone. That is happening very quick, right? So that is definitely one of the bull cases there, right? I mean, and now, I mean, and I'm not, when I was with on Christian's channel, right? I did make the statement that, this could easily be a 10x, right? A multi-bag. And I stand with that still, right? I mean, not financial advice, right? But that's where still I am, right? I mean, it could, I don't see any bear case on why this will not get to $100 billion company.
Right.
Now, beyond that, there is definitely, there are definitely problems, right? Beyond that $100 billion, I mean, to become a $1 trillion company, right? I mean, as you can see with some of these latest developments, right? I mean, companies like either an Oracle or a Microsoft, they are not going to sit back and take this competition just like that. I mean, we are going to see one heck of a competition coming from those kind of companies and maybe even sabotaging, right? I mean, it is survival essentially, right? I mean, if you believe what Alex Karp said, it's like we are going to take the whole market. I don't think these companies are going to let them do that, right? I mean, so worst case, I mean, it will be a $50 to $100 billion company, right? I mean, it will remain there. And my expectations are basically like, okay, by 2030, it's at least a $100 billion company, right? And it could, there can definitely be cases made that it could go beyond that and far beyond that, right?
Yeah.
But the journey is difficult indeed, right? I mean, if you are interested in talking about the bear cases, we can, right?
Yeah.